Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mind of Marie, the space where we explore the intersections of story, sovereignty, and soul. I'm your host, Marie Johnson, and today's guest brings a powerful and deeply personal narrative to the table. Debbie Show is the author of Paper Roses, a novel born from a need to understand how a family's shared history can send siblings in such starkly different directions, which I can relate to. Inspired by her sister Tracy's crimes and her mother's wartime childhood in Morocco, Debbie spent 4 years weaving interviews, research, and memory into a story that is as haunting as it is healing. So, Debbie, let me just give you a warm welcome to the Mind of Marie. I am honored to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on.
Okay, so for our first question, what inspired you to write Paper Roses, and how did your family's story begin to take shape as a novel?
Yeah, so I felt I've always had a bombshell of a story, and I've always wanted to tell it. I'm a big truth teller. I think that comes from trauma sometimes, is that you have like a justice sensitivity where you want things to go. So I wanted to write a memoir at first, like a burn it all down memoir, but I don't necessarily like those, and it would have come out way too harsh. I decided to go with autobiographical fiction. As soon as I got that phone call from the New York Times that my sister had been arrested for the third time. I thought, okay, I've got to write this now. I can't put it off anymore.
So, how did your sister Tracy's story influence the emotional tone and structure of the book?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I wanted to start the book with her, but then she would have just completely swallowed up the entire story. So I had to kind of let it kind of happen organically, where eventually it got to be kind of a story about sisters. I think that it actually got really kind of camp and funny. Once the two sisters were interacting all the time, it was really kind of hilarious, but also sad too. I think I use humor a lot to deal with trauma, and when things are tough, I get kind of funny.
That's relatable. So, what was it like to trace your family's history all the way back to your mother's childhood in Morocco?
That was really cool. Um, I even went so far as to buy maps of 1940s Morocco, street maps of 1940s Morocco, to try to trace all the places she had been. I'd actually been there before, but not in the 1940s. So, I got to see, the cemetery, the school that she went to, and I took all of her stories. I basically took all of her stories, all the things she didn't like, and put them in the narrative. And I gave her a maid to be someone who was kind of her helper, so she wasn't all by herself.
That's an inventive way to do things. Sounds like an interesting narrative already. How did you balance, or rather, excuse me, how do you navigate the emotional labor of writing about trauma, memory, and family rupture?
Yeah, I think this is where fiction really helped a lot, because if I was writing a memoir, I don't think it ever would have ended. And I think writing fiction, you get to put a manhole cover on some of those emotions, and you can give a different ending. I mean, the ending for Nikki, who is Tracy in my book, is very different than Tracy's ending. And, I got to send her to juvenile hall. I got to do some things that were really healing. My dad got a really good edit. My dad's ending was a really great edit. It wasn't quite as sad as it was in real life. So it was very healing.
Kind of cathartic in that way.
Hmm.
So, what were some of the most surprising or difficult truths that surfaced during your research and interviews?
Yeah, so I actually contacted some people who had known my sister in high school, her ex boyfriend, and then someone else. I'm not going to say who it was, but my sister was, when she was about 15 years old, she went to Japan to model. And really, what it really was is trafficking, where you're working in the hostess clubs. And so, I got to talk to some of the people who knew her then, and found out what they thought about her, because at this point I was already out of the house. And I think the difficult truths are our family was always very, I mean, they had a healthy amount of narcissism, so everything seemed glittering and perfect, from the outside. I mean, just like, so to find out that our family was just very ordinary, and then in a lot of ways, it was just in a way kind of grimy when once you take the veneer off. That was hard to deal with for me.
Yeah, kind of when the whole mask of everything's ripped off and you're left with no choice but to accept what you're seeing.
No choice at all.
What has the response been like from readers, especially those who've lived through similar family structures?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question because I had a neighbor who lived like four houses down from me. She was 3 or 4 years younger than I was. And she was like, "Oh, I've lived through something similar." And then I had a kind of high school acquaintance who kind of told me the same thing. And it was just, I thought it was odd that we were